All righty, let's start talking about the good stuff. I love this topic because it's just so, this is the sticking place for so many practitioners. And this is what we're going to, let me take a step back and start at the beginning because we're going to talk about why it's so sticky. So hello, a formal introduction. My name is Robin Mayberry. And I am a certified body talk practitioner, have been since 2008, also a licensed massage therapist. So for a while, I was doing both of these, offering both of those services in an in-person setting. That has changed. I recently added coaching, life coaching, intuitive coaching to my roster. And to me, coaching is deep listening and problem solving. I can't do a coaching session, though, really without body talk kind of getting into it because life happens in the body. So if we're going to talk about your life and what you believe and what's going on and where you're stuck, we're probably going to bring your body into it. So that's still something that's very much what I offer. Is body talk just kind of comes into everything that I offer. I am self-employed. I have been self-employed. Well, I actually opened my first office before I got my certification back in 2008, like shortly before I got my certification in 2008. I was like, I know I'm doing this. So I opened my first minuscule little office back then, and I have had a continuous practice ever since. It has not always been something I exclusively lived on, but I've always had a practice. And I love being self-employed. I have take a little of exception to the term self-employed because but I also, you can call me an entrepreneur or solopreneur or soulpreneur, whatever, but self-employed will work. And I am a board member of the Pacific Northwest Body Talk Association. I am the secretary. So if you get an email these days, it is probably coming from me. So we're going to just jump right in here. Again, I will say I love this whole topic because body talk practitioners and all manner of healers tend to get into our work not for the money. So most people I know that have gotten into this kind of work and spent a significant amount of our own resources and time and like really developing our skills and everything, we're doing it to make the world a better place. We're doing it to be a contribution. We're doing it, maybe we have someone in our life that's got a health problem, or our child or our parent or our partner. I hear a lot of that. Or we ourselves have a health problem, and then we find body talk and it really, makes a difference, and then we get interested. But I don't know many people who've gotten into this work to get rich. It's just not usually the driver. But that said, it's critical. And the reason why it's critical is because we live in a capitalist society, and until the day comes that everyone can just live their gifts and we distribute all our resources, and we're not there. I hope we get there. I think we're going there, but we're not there today. And so in the meantime, we are required, if we're going to spend a lot of our time doing something, then we have to be compensated for it. There has to be an exchange, or it gets relegated to a hobby thing that's on Sunday afternoons or after work on Tuesdays. And, it just becomes this little whittly thing. So if you want to do this, if this is something you want to make part of your life, you have to get paid. Unless you're independently wealthy, which maybe you are. But I'm going to start by just sharing. I was very, very uncomfortable with the idea. So I'll just share my personal story. I was very uncomfortable with receiving money. This has been a long journey for me. I'm much, much more comfortable now. It's been a lot of practice, and it's been a lot of little workshops like this, honestly, a lot of exchanging of ideas. But when I started in Body Talk, I did get my office, and it was really, the rent was very reasonable. It was a tiny little place. So I kind of just was like, oh, well, I'll just pay. I don't know. I wasn't really thinking about even making my expenses. I just wanted to do this work. And so initially, I would say really for the first couple of months, it wasn't just twice. It was for a while, I actually had to address this with a couple people. I was getting, people would bring me a dozen eggs from their chickens, or this one lady, she was lovely. She made me this neck warmer with like, that you put in the microwave. And people were kind of just making donations of like $10 or something like that. And I was completely unclear. And I was just delighted to be to be doing the work, but it rapidly started to erode. I was like, okay, like at first I was like, oh, she brought me eggs. And then like, it didn't take long before I was like, what am I going to do with all these eggs? I have to pay my rent. So it did not take long for me to start to understand, oh, I was going to have to address this. And then I went to a Body Talk trade, just little in-person trade, 4 or 5 people there. And this topic came up and I sort of just like, oh, I don't know, I'm just getting eggs and neck warmers and whatnot. And there was this group of older women and I felt a little bit pounced upon. They were like, what? And they were absolutely right. They got the message to me. I honestly don't even remember any of their names anymore. I would give credit because it was really valuable. I received the message that to not do a fair exchange for the work that I was doing was undervaluing the work. And other people are also doing this work. So I was like, well, $20. And at the time, which was 2008, I mean, this is at the time for where I live. And in 2008, they suggested take no less than $50. Now, if you live in Cameroon, that would be different. It is now 2023. It's different. Depending on who your friend, if you're in Los Angeles, it's going to be different. But I got the sense like it should be a commitment, at least the person that you're working with should understand that this is an active value. And it was a real, like, I went away from that, like, oh boy, I got to be doing this. And thus started my journey of like, I believe when I started, I believe it was $50 because I could not ask for more than that. And even then I was like, $50. It's been a journey. I do not do that now. I mean, this is how I make my living. If you want the work that I do, this is what it costs. What I do find is, again, because many Body Talk practitioners, and this is maybe the last time I'll say it, but really all people who are attracted to the healing arts tend to get into it from a heart-based place and not so much the 401k is great kind of place. It's much more often I see that people are undercharging rather than I just don't see it very often that people are charging some astronomical rate and like sort of have to like maybe reset that. I see it much more often that people are keeping it low for all kinds of reasons. But I will bring to your awareness, if you think that you might be, if you feel, and this is like, there is no right answer. We're going to talk about this a little bit further on. There's no magical handbook that's like, oh, you should be charging that. You have to really feel into it. But if you're feeling like, I might be one of the ones that's undercharging, then this is, then listen up, because hoping there's going to be some good stuff in here for you. Let's just keep in mind why we're charging money. And I charge a lot of money. So I will just start off with this. At this point, a session, well, to me, this feels like I feel really good about this. I charge $180 US for a single session, or $497 US for a package of 3 sessions. That's where I am right now. I change it. I change it all the time. I rarely go back down though, because I raise it when I feel like it's time. And so then I will still feel like, oh, maybe I should lower it, but that's just my crazy brain. And I have ways of creating space for people who that kind of money is just not in their budget. But for plenty of people it is, and that's what I need to make. We will talk a little bit more about the formula here, but in the meantime, let's just talk about why we need to be doing this. You have personal expenses for your life, and it's beyond just rice and beans. You probably want to go to the beach sometimes. You probably have a house or apartment or a residence of some kind that probably needs some love and attention. You might have a dog that you want to get groomed. You might have dentist bills. You might be going to school. I mean, who knows? You have personal expenses. And if you're going to spend your time offering your work, then you need to meet those expenses. Otherwise, you're going to have to go do something else with your time, as we mentioned. And then this work gets squished off to where you have a little bit of energy left. Your business has expenses. So the minute you open up, the minute that you put someone on your table and do a session on them, and you're certified and you're no longer like doing it like, for trade or whatever, as soon as you like conduct an exchange, you're in business. And that business has expenses. So that also needs to be considered as you're doing your work. I mean, as time goes on, you're going to have office space and you're going to have taxes and you're going to have maybe, support of an accountant or a bookkeeper, or you're going to have marketing and you're going to have software. It's just part of it. It's just part of what happens. And you're going to want these things. So that's a factor. And then let's not forget our government. I love a paved road. I love that if there's a fire in my backyard that I can call the fire department. My kids went to school. Taxes are kind of a thing, and that's just a reality too. So we do have to be asking for money for doing what we do. This leads me into just money mindset is a class of its own, actually. And as I was putting this together, I was like, okay, we got to probably just dive in deeper it's a little bit of a catchphrase, and maybe a little bit at this point, a little bit of a tired catchphrase, but I think it's worth mentioning that if what I've said so far makes you uncomfortable, then that's fine. And that is your system's response to the topic of money. So you may agree, you may disagree, you may be uncomfortable, you may be like wanting to jump in and be like, no, this is how you do it. And that is just an indicator of where you kind of sit. Money is a really complicated issue. It's got all the kinds of correlated ideas with it, a lot of stories, a lot of active memories, a lot of matrices that go on with money. But again, if you're going to be in business and you're going to offer body talk for at least some of your living, then this is something that just may need some love from you. So again, just remember that what we're doing when I offer someone a session, I just spend all day doing sessions. And at the end of the sessions, or sometimes I prepay, but regardless, at the end of each session, I got paid. Why? Because I didn't get paid for what they got out of it, because that's not up to me. That's not our work that we do. I got paid for what I put into it, and I put my time into it. I put my energy into it. I put my attention into it, and I put 15 years of studying this work into it, not to mention all the other things that I study all the time. And I'm sure that is true for you as well. I brought a lifetime's worth of expertise to every session that I do. It's a little tough to put a dollar. So you start thinking about that. It's like, oh my God, wait, it should be $2,000 a session. It probably should, but that's, maybe down the road, or maybe today, I don't know. But when you're exchanging, that's what you're exchanging. You're not exchanging like, come and see me and I'll fix your headache, which one of the things I love about body talk is how clear we are about that. But it's a good thing to remember, because we can go sideways like, oh, she still has the headache. Oh, should I charge? Yeah, because you put your time in, you put your money in, you put your your energy in, you put your expertise in, and the person that made the appointment with you and came to see you is going to exchange what money is representing is like holding their energy, and they're giving it back. It's good to remember that there does need to be an exchange for there to be a kind of a cleanness and a completeness to the back and forth between the two people. So when I sit down with somebody, my field is talking to their field, and honestly, we're both giving and receiving. Like, yeah, somebody's buying a session from me, but we are exchanging. And if it just becomes that someone plops down on my table and I give everything to them, and I mean, I've certainly done this, believe me, things I've learned the hard way, and they get up and leave with whatever experience they had, great or terrible or somewhere in the middle. If nothing comes back, it like falls flat. The client doesn't feel good about it. I don't feel good about it. And it's not because of like stories, it's because of energy. Like if I'm delivering and then nothing returns, there's like an incomplete equation. So just keep that in mind. The numbers vary, but the exchange really does have to be there for your clients to receive what you're giving them. And it doesn't have to be money. Like really, if you're working on your mom, you're not going to be like, let me get your checkbook out. I don't think, maybe, I don't know. You may well work on people that exchanging money is not appropriate. It doesn't feel right, but that's outside of really business. When you're in business, most of the time money represents all those different forms of energy for us. So we do need to exchange it for people to feel like they've received something. Just seems to be the case. I think I originally learned that in Body Talk from John, and I have seen that to be true. When I try to go around that, like, oh, I'm just going to be nice, like it doesn't land. It's unsatisfying. So you can tell me what your experience is. I would be interested to hear. There is a little, we're going to talk about this again, but it's good to remember, do not compare the rates you set with someone else's money block. Because there may be people in this field or anywhere else around you that have not worked through, or like they're in a different place in their relationship with money. And they're like, I don't know, $12. And to try to like, be like, oh, should I charge $12? I mean, they're charging $12 and they're like, they've been around for a long time. That's just, that person is like working through their own journey. And so as you're setting your rates and getting comfortable with this whole exchange, just keep in mind, no one has the answers. There is no expert on this. It's a real disappointment. It would be great if the expert answer is, but it really is a constantly moving metric that just changes. And as time generally numbers tend to go up over time, first of all, because numbers, money does like inflation, but also because your value as far as like what you've learned and your experience and just your time on the planet also brings more and more and more over time to the session. So those numbers tend to go up, but they do fluctuate, and it is a dance and it is a conversation. So don't set your conversation based on someone else's conversation and their conversation with their money life. And the last thing I've got on here is this idea, new level, new devil, because some people tuning in, maybe you've been in business for a while, maybe you've been running your practice for a while, maybe you've been offering sessions for a while, or maybe you were going through the certification process and you were taking a smaller donation before you were certified, and now you're ready to charge because you got your business together and you're certified and all that. And whoops, I believe I need to admit now. And every time that you change that level, really, if I was charging 40 and now I'm going to switch to charging 75, it can bring all this stuff up again. So this is something we work through over and over and over, because you just go from 40 to 75 and you're like, oh, should I be doing that? Then you go from 75 to 100. Oh, should I be doing that? It just happens every time, because every time it's an invitation for our safety brains to be like, is this good? Is this okay? Is this cool? And yeah, it is good. It is okay. And it is cool. Oops. Okay, here we go. Trying to change my thing. Okay, there we go. So let's talk about how to set your rates. So there's just a little overview of why to set your rates. This is 3 methods that I have used myself and I have seen other people use, and we'll just kind of go over them. So if you are looking for like, okay, I'm just getting started, I don't have a big client base yet, I'd like to like kind of get my feet under me so that you can feel as much as possible like, okay, I'm getting started in a place that feels right to me. I'll just share these 3 in no particular order. They all have value. So we'll just cover these. The calculation method is actually, I just called it that. I don't know. I don't think she has a term for it, but there's a person named, her name is Bear a Bear. And her website is bearcoaches.com. And she's an anti-capitalist coach. And I really like her work. She's smart. And I just like the way she approaches things. And she's like, yeah, you got to get paid, but you don't want to be necessarily just like trying to get your Lamborghini. So I resonate with what she's saying. And she suggests that essentially you run your math. And it's like, okay, I need $1,000 a month. Let's just, for a number, all right? I need to make $1,000 a month because I need 500 for my personal expenses and I need 500 for my business. So I need to make $1,000 a month, and I want to see 10 clients a month. So I need to charge those clients $100 a month. It does involve running some math. It does involve doing some bookkeeping and feeling into like, how much do you need and where does it go? It involves, this is easy to say and complicated really to really come up with a solid number, but this is a solid way to come up with your number. If you know that you need to have $2,000 a month to cover your expenses and you do not want to see more than, I'm just coming up with numbers again, just because math brain, but you need to have, like, I don't want to see more than 20 clients a month, or I don't have more than 20 clients a month, and I need to make 2,000 a month. Again, that would be about 100 a session. But if I can see 40 clients a month, well, don't go too much lower than 100 a session in the US anyway. But I think you get my drift. How much do you need? How many clients do you have bandwidth for? Divide it. Then you know when you offer that rate, like that is the rate that you need to be paid to be in business. And it's just kind of as simple as that. And, you know, maybe you can have some wiggle room with your numbers and what you're spending your money on and that kind of stuff. But we all kind of have a base rate that we just need to have to, you know, have a roof over our heads and clothes and food and get the dog groomed. You know, I have a spaniel. We get her groomed. So that's what I call the calculation method. Again, it's a little time consuming, but really valuable. So I did it and I actually found that my rates were pretty close to where I was at. And I was like, okay. I mean, I did a real kind of loose version of it. I didn't get all granular, but I was like, yeah, no, I'm about right for just what my business costs, what my life costs, how many people I want to see. I pretty much land. And so that is a good option to explore. The half again method offsets the undercharging. And it sounds a little crazy, but this I have done too. And this takes a little more guts to do. But let's say that you're like, you know, I feel real good about charging $60 for my, again, I'm pulling numbers just because I don't do a lot of math in my head fast. But let's just say, you know, when I do my stuff, I say $60 a session. That feels right on. Well, unless you really think that you're an overcharger, I suggest, how does it feel if then you say, okay, I'm going to make it 90. If you say, I want to charge $80. Okay, what if it was 120? So the half again method, you can just play with the numbers, but trust your body. Your head's going to go crazy. If you use the half again method, it's, oh my God, you know, I'm charging 100 and I'm going to go to 150. I'm charging 150 and I'm going to go to 225. It can feel like a leap, but trust your body. And if your body's like, yeah, no, that's about right, then you have to go back and just kind of like do your work around your money mindset and receive what's appropriate for you. But the half again method is a way to break through the undercharging loop that we can get into, and just a way to sort of mentally expand and just play with it. It's always just a matter of playing with it. And you could be like, no, I can't. If I'm charging 80, I say 120. I'm like, no way. But maybe it's like, but 110 I could do. Because remember, this is really an exchange. And when your clients are paying you, then they're giving their energy back to you. And it creates a fair exchange. That's what you're after. The joiner method is the third one that I see most people doing. And I have certainly done myself. And this is what makes industries have a set point, is the joiner method. So some people get in and they're going to start their sessions at $80. In fact, that is a thing I see. That number is a thing I see people when they're first getting started, something around there. And some people have been around for a really long time. And like my son sees a person regularly that's been around forever, and she's really, she's an excellent practitioner. And she charges $190 for a half hour. So whatever that is. See the math, whatever that is. But it's more than $80. So somewhere in the middle here, I did once hear of a practitioner that charged $600 a session. And I was like, okay, but I mean, so that just goes to show there's a whole range. So the joiner method is like, okay, you kind of suss out what's the range. What are most people charging? Okay, most people are charging like between 120 and 150. So I'll choose a number in there. And honestly, that is what most people do. And it's totally legit. I'm not going to tell you that it's not legit. The only downside is it kind of keeps a field of kind of circling around the same pot over and over. Well, you know, she's charging 130, so I don't want to charge more than her. So I'll do 125. And then the next person gets in, well, she's charging 125 and I just got started, so I'll do 120, you know, and it really makes it tricky for the expectations of clients. Like they go, okay, well, I guess that's how much it costs, which might be fine, but sometimes can be limiting. So just keep that in mind. It goes back to this idea, don't let someone else's money blocks set your rate. And that's really, when you do the joiner method, that's kind of what you're dealing with. I am surprised, actually, in our profession, some of the rates that I see from highly experienced people. I'm like, okay, I charge more. I mean, I'm not going to tell somebody else what to do, but I'm also not going to be held back by it. I'm not going to say, oh, he doesn't charge this, so I better dial it back. I'm not going to do that for all these reasons that I just explained. It's because I know what I'm bringing to a session, and I know what I need to bring to a session, and I know what I need to receive to it from a session to continue to do it. So suggestions, again, just to recap, what do you need divided by how many people can you see is what you charge. Half again is, okay, I feel like maybe this, which you can pretty much assume is your scaredy brain, and just bump it up again by half and see how it lands. If you get an excited feeling, that might be a yes. And the joiner method is just look around you, ask around. Most people I know in the body talk profession are pretty open about, we don't tend to be closed books and like, yeah, this is what we charge. And remember, it's fluctuating, it's fluid. You can change your mind at any time. You could say, hey, I'm going to charge $200 an hour, then you do, or a session, and then you do that a couple times. You're like, and you can bring your rates back down. There's no law. There is no law. And along those lines, I have a little bit of an anti-capitalist streak. I don't think that capitalism is a particularly great system. Let's put it that way. But I'm not an economist. I just, I can see the effects on the world around us of living inside of a system that's just designed to grow and to sort of chews everything up on the way. So as a person who does healing practitioner work, I certainly run into people who have gotten chewed up by the system or can't, like there's definitely people for whom my rates are not accessible. So here I'm going to share with you, these are some ways, even when I started at $50 back when, that was not accessible for some people. There are absolutely people for whom like, nope. And this is healing work, and we want to offer the healing work. So this little bit here speaks to this. First of all, I'm going to just beg you, do not discount. That is a rule I learned early on, and I have found it to be true. Discounting is a hole. If you say, well, I usually do 100, but I'll knock off 20% for you, that person is never going to want to pay 100. They're going to be like, well, last time, it was 80 and yeah, I brought 80. How are you with it? And it just gets real hairy and everyone feels weird. And then you feel a little bit like, well, okay, 80 is not bad. It just gets real hinky. And there's really no way out of it, because once you've set like, well, I'll knock a little off, then it's like in the field. So I am going to implore you, if you're like, I'm not feeling 100% on these rates, add something. So if you're like, I really want to play with how it feels to receive $100 for this session, but I'm feeling, add something to it. I will do a body talk session and then we'll follow up in 15 minutes or for 15 minutes, in a couple of weeks or something. Or I'm still a massage therapist. I don't do it and I don't actively practice, but when I was actively practicing massage therapy, I would add on. I'd be like, here's your body talk session and let's add on a 15-minute scalp massage, or let's do feet or something like that, as a way to be an incentive without discounting, because discounting sends a message like, I'm just playing with numbers, but I'm not really worth it. Whereas adding value is like, look, I want to do a little something extra for you. I know that this is a stretch and you're trying out this new thing. It's a whole different energy. So I'm just going to start there. Like that is something I've learned. I heard it. It was like I was given this information a couple different ways, and then I played with it and I found that to be true. Like people don't value what you're doing if you don't value what you're doing. And that is just a bummer for everybody. So value yourself. One thing I have done, and in fact, it's like this close to my brain, like I got to bring that back, is like once a month hardship sessions. It's a little tricky again, because sometimes they're not valued. But if you're like, I know this thing, I want to do this thing, I want to help people that can't necessarily, like, let's say, the unhoused population, or I tried to bring body talk into the local jail. I'll just tell you that didn't work. They were like, you're doing what? I was like, well, you tap on the head. Yeah, it didn't work. But I had this idea like, oh, when the prisoners just like would feel so much better. And of course they would, but yeah, the jail wasn't down with that. But if you have those same kind of leanings, like you want to bring your work to people who need your work, and those aren't necessarily people with a flush bank account, then you can have like, okay, once a month I do a session, and I would suggest you have like some kind of a hoop, like fill out a form, or this is the special schedule, or something like that, just so that people understand they're getting something special. But for sure, we are doing this work because we care about humans, and it's not all about the money, even though we're talking about the money. Doing wellness fairs and other events is another really good way. There was just one Diana was at, and Ellen Hanks, who's also on our board, was at, and people are walking around getting sessions. And yeah, it's like it's a taster, but they're getting sessions. And so you can offer your work in that way. And it's kind of a win-win, because then people see what you do, but also you're just giving your work away for a little while there. Payment plans are another. I changed my thinking about payment plans because of Bear, that bearcoaches.com. She just helped me to see I was suspicious about payment plans. Like, oh, I'm going to have to chase people and hassle people. And the reality is, like, those aren't my people. That's not who I work with. Like, the people who come to me and want to do this weird thing that I do are like open-hearted, good-hearted people. And if they want a session and we need to break it into 4 payments, and they are paying for it 4 months after the session, that's fine. They'll pay for it. It's no big deal. It's fine. And especially if I'm doing packages, I absolutely offer them to break it into payments. But even if it's just a single session, which, maybe someone else could just pay, if someone can't, yeah, I work with people. I'm just like, okay, if you want this and this is what it costs, well, how would you like to do this? I do that with artwork too. And I did that over last Christmas, and somebody bought a little piece. And I mean, it was like, I think it was $45. It was not a particularly expensive art piece, but the person did not have it. She had $15 a week, and she brought $15 a week to me and my art studio, and brought $15 a week until that thing was paid 3 times. So people are good. So that is another option to keep in mind. If you want to offer this stuff and it's just too difficult for some people, let them pay for it over time, or let them pay for it ahead of time, a little layaway kind of thing. But usually if someone needs healing, they need it fast. And here's the last thing I'll just share. This is just a personal thing, but I will share it because it has worked for me, and I've seen this be a problem for other people. I offer sessions. If a friend of mine has sprained her ankle, if a family member has a sinus infection, of course, for like my kids and husband, I'm just going to do it, but that's a whole other topic. I actually prefer other people to work in my direct family. But if someone that's in my life, I look at them and I'm like, I would like to give them a session. My policy is, if I offer you a session, that's a gift. That would be weird. Like, oh, I could do some body talk on you. It's only $180. Like, what? No, if I offer you a session because I see that you are in a state and I might have something that's going to help you with that state, that's a gift. That's a gift. And that's how I honor my spirit, really, in this work. However, if then I work on your ankle and you come back 2 weeks later and you're like, you know what, my wrist is really bothering me. Well, then now you're requesting the service and there is paid. And that has worked for me. And I've told my friends and my neighbors and, people who are in my life, like, hey, that's my policy. If I walk up to you, that's a gift from me. If you walk up to me, it's a service. And nobody has ever questioned that. They're just like, okay, because they're asking me for it. So it's not like, I'm trying to trick anybody or anything like that. But that way I can help people when they need it without feeling like it's weird. So just sharing that with you. The other piece that I think it's important to acknowledge is, like, when do you raise it? So some people are listening and they're just getting started with your practice. And you're trying to figure out what your starting place. But some people have been going along for a while and you're like, I think it's probably time. When is it time to raise your rates? It's when you start asking yourself if it's time to raise your rates. Like, sorry, once that information starts kind of going across, your innate wisdom knows, and it does know. For those reasons where we started, it's because you have expenses. It's because your business has expenses. It's because there's only so many clients you can see. And there's maybe only so many clients you do see, just basically based on the size of your client list. And you got to charge what you need to charge. And if you're starting to feel like, this is not really feeling right, well, there's number one clue. Yep, it's probably time to raise your rates, even if it's scary. We're going to talk about how next. But here's some indicators. And one, I have felt this so many times. And I always go through the period because new level, new devil, where I'm like, no, it's fine. I don't want to go through this. But I'm like pissed every time like someone books. I know it's time to raise my rates when I'm mad when somebody puts an appointment on when I get the little notification, bing, has scheduled. I'm like, oh, that's because I'm like, there's not a fair exchange. And that's not their fault. That's never my client's fault. It's like, that is an indicator to me that I'm giving out more than is coming back, and I'm starting to feel resentful about it. And I don't want to be that way. I want to be a free, like, I want my energy to flow. Another indicator is like your business might be growing and you can't keep up with it. Maybe your office is bigger, maybe your taxes are bigger, maybe you need more support, maybe you decide to get a website and then you put all the little add-ons on and now it's like costing you more than you had to pay before. You might need to raise your rates, and that's kind of part of the deal. That really is part of the package. You don't want to limit the way your business is growing because you don't want to ask people for an exchange. Ask for the exchange and let your business grow. That's what it wants to do. It's like, otherwise it'll get stuck in a pot and get pot bound. If you were thinking to yourself, you know what, I'm just going to get a job. This is stupid. This is too much. I'm working and not getting paid anything. I'm just going to go work at McDonald's. Then that is an indicator that your rates are off. And it does help longevity to feel like when you go to work, it's worth your time. That's for sure. And the last one I want to share that kind of surprised me, and over time, I didn't pick this up from anywhere. Like, I get a lot of ideas I read a lot of books and do a lot of classes and stuff. But this one I was like, oh, I started to realize that when my rates needed to raise, clients started bringing me presents. And I know, because I work with energy, that they didn't feel like it was even. So they started bringing me crystals and stones and socks and candy and all this kind of stuff. Like, this has happened now a few different waves, enough for me to go, oh, this is a thing. So, or they start like, I don't take tips, but my policy is like, I charge what I charge. You don't have to worry about adding more to it. That's my price. But when people start like insisting, like, are you sure you don't take a tip? Oh, it's because they know it's not quite fair on their part. They don't feel good about it. So when people are trying to add more, I go, okay, it's time for my rates to go up. And for me, just personally, my rates did just go up like within the last year. I don't expect them to go up for a while. I'm kind of sitting in a place that feels really good to me. But when this starts happening again, that's one thing that always happens is that people are like, oh, let me give you, just flush it out a little bit. And then I know, then it's time. And I will have a new level and I will have a new devil. So when this moment comes, and it's a scary moment, and it's never not scary, I would love to tell you like, oh, you're going to see this slide in this little mini presentation, and then you're just going to go raise all your rates, and it's going to be so easy. And it is not. I would add just a little thing in here. Get your support team around you and say, I've been charging 100. I know I need to charge 130. Be my backup. Because it's scary. All your things about are you a fraud, and do people really like you, and are they going to leave, and are you going to be rejected, and are you going to sit alone at the lunch table all by yourself because you raised your rate? Like, it comes up. There is no way around it. So just be ready for it. Like, sorry, you're in business. This is part of the adventure. So get your support team around you, because this is not for the faint of heart. But I'm hoping I've made my point that you'll get here. So when you do, have your people. This is why we are actively growing our local association, is for exactly this kind of thing. So that we know other people we can just reach out to and go, all right, I'm going to do it. And your friends go, yeah, great, good for you. And we don't join or rate either. So we all have different price points in our association, and we will all support each other when it's raising rates time. So this first thing, just the facts. I almost wanted to share this clip. So I use QuickBooks, and I got an email just like in the last 2 weeks or something from QuickBooks, and it said this: we're raising your rates. It was this, and now it's this. Thank you. And I was like, okay. And, and I was like, well, I guess that's how you do it. And in fact, that is how it was a little bit, it caught my attention because it was so direct. Like, usually there's a little bit of padding because we need to do this, or because prices are going up everywhere and blah, blah, or because we value you. There was none of that. It was like, oh, we used to charge you this, but now we're charging you this, letting you know. I was like, okay, that's actually really, I had about a half a second of like, and then I was like, well, yeah, okay, yeah, All right. Like that was so straightforward. So I actually, if you could do it, it's a pretty good approach. Just to be, this is the facts. Like I was charging this and now I'm going to be charging this. And then let people have their feelings. You don't got to babysit their feelings. It's not what you're in the business for. One thing that helps, or there's two things that help though with that. And again, I've done this a whole bunch of times and I have found less is more. Oh, want to let you know that starting on this date, my rate's going to this. I have learned not to be because, and I blah, 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 just keep it simple. But two things that have helped. And one is notice, especially when you have clients that come on a regular basis, want to let you know, today's August, at the end of September, on September 30th, that'll be the last day that this is this rate. So after that, it'll be that. And with the heads up, I don't know that I've ever lost a client over raising rates. I can't think of a client that I've ever lost because of people, move along and are done and stuff, but I've not, no one's leaping in mind that's like, what? Like people just go, okay. And they just make an adult decision. The other thing that really has helped me a lot, and again, it can be a little sticky because you'd have to put a cap. I usually say that people can buy 3 sessions, but I offer for people to prepay. So I will say, okay, on September 30th, my rate is going to go, like right now it's 180. Let's say that I say, well, on September 30th or October 1st, my rate's going to 200. But if you'd like to prepay, then you can prepay up to 3 sessions. So you don't want them prepaying 1 million sessions, but just because it's hard to track and everything else. But that has softened the blow a lot of times where people are just a little bit like, okay, because money is, it doesn't matter if people have $1 million. They are just, it's always just a little bit hairy. And this helps it to sort of like to let people percolate with that. It also helps people to understand that, yeah, they're going to be coming 3 more times. So, okay, they'll do that. So I give people a little notice and I give people the option like, hey, you can coast a little bit longer at these rates, and then they can make a choice. That's a strategy that's worked for me. And we are getting up on 8 o'clock and we might run a little bit long tonight. But of course you are a grown-up and can do as you need to do. We are going to still talk about creating packages, and I have one other topic that's brief. The other piece about setting, or the other thought about setting rates, is to package. And so I kind of want to just talk a little bit about the pros and cons of that. A lot of people use this approach. And so I see a lot of people doing the package format. And the reason why is because you can offer a better price point. So it's just basically as simple as that. If somebody buys I do it. So if someone buys a single session, it's 180, but if they buy 3, it's 497, which is basically like 165. It's a little bit less. And the reason is because I'm buying 3 at once, because I know, so like I get a bigger, even if they break it up, I'm getting paid. That's less sales conversations I need to have, even if they're short. And so it's benefit for them because they're getting a little bit less. It's benefit for me because I know that I'm going to get a certain amount of money, and hey, that's nice. But it's also a benefit for our client relationship because now the person's going to come 3 times. I love the 3-person package. I was playing for a while with only offering packages. I'm always playing with stuff. Right now, I'm not doing that, but maybe next time that you talk to me, I will be. But this means that somebody is committed for 3 sessions, which usually is kind of the magic for Body Talk. If that's been my experience, people with big stuff going on, the first time they're like, okay, the second time they're like, oh, and the third time they're like, what are you doing? Because it just takes a little bit of layer removal, And so when you offer a package, you have that opportunity to get through the process with your client. So particularly when you're starting with a client, it's a great place to start. But I still continue to offer it. And I have people that just, they buy the 3, they buy the 3, they buy the 3. They're going to see me forever, buy the 3 until I change it. And it's just simplifies things. So it's all those things are a win. And the other thing that I want to say is, if you do nothing but Body Talk, if that's your only offer or the only offer you're offering to certain client base people, then you can bundle like 3 for so much or 5 for so much. I wouldn't go too far out into the ether. One person I know here locally does 6. That to me would probably be the hard limit, because that's going to be 6 months. Well, and let's talk about why. Well, we'll talk about why not in just a minute, but you can bundle by number of sessions is the most common thing. And again, it just makes life a little easier, and you get paid and everybody's happy. And they do love when they're like on their second and their third session, it's already paid. They just, ooh. I've had people say, oh, today's me, thanks, yesterday's me, because I already paid for it, So it's just a little bit of a fun thing. But if you only do body talk, you're going to bundle by the number of sessions, because that's all you're offering. But if you offer other services, you can bundle that. So I used to have an in-person practice. Now I work via Zoom, but I used to have an in-person practice, and I was a massage therapist as well. So I had this thing called the Bliss package. Oh my God. If you were a body talk or body work practitioner, if you do hands-on work, people loved it. There's just not that many manual therapists that also are body talk practitioners in my neck of the woods. People loved it. So what I would do is I did the body talk first, and then I did the massage. So they had like the hour for it to bake in. Oh my God. It was very popular package. And I'd do like 2 or 3 of those in a day. And that was my day, and everybody was happy and life was good. So that's a thought for you. Or people bundle it with Reiki, people bundle it with feng shui. You can, whatever the other things that you do, you can bring them together. So it's just a thought for you. But I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge, these are the tricky parts about selling a package. For me, the hardest thing, it's disheartening for me when I've sold a bunch of packages 2 months ago, and now I've got a client list that's totally full and they've all already paid. I'm like, oh, just like, no money for me this week, because they already all paid, it's terrific when they all pay. Oh my, this is terrific, but it's a little harder. And especially if you have a longer, so like the person that I know that has the 6-session packages, that's just, if you see someone once a month, you could be seeing someone for 4, 5, 6 months, long after they're done paying, even if they paid you a payment plan. So it's just, you got to know yourself. You got to know how you feel on a day-to-day. Some people are like 100% fine with that. Some people find it disheartening. So just be aware, that's a thing. And the other thing is that you do have to have a way to track, so some software systems like Vagaro you can sell packages. I don't actually use it. I have a note app in my phone that I just keep backed up. Really, it's pretty primitive, but it works. I just look, I have a little system, and when somebody buys a package, I just put it and track it like that. But you have to have a way. Some people keep it in their file. I've done that too. Some people keep it in their SOAP notes or client chart notes, whatever. I do that too, or have done that. But you will have to track it, because you can't expect your client to track it. If they buy 3 sessions, it's up to you to know. They got enough to think about. So you're the practitioner. So for some people, that's a discouraging factor. If you're going to do it, think about that. How are you going to keep track of what they paid, when they paid, and and how long? Sometimes people have a limit on how long they can use. I've never had it be a problem, but I have had people come back with gift certificates a million years later that are all battered and stuff, and I have to decide okay, do I even still offer that thing? So there can be limits, but that's something to think about, is just tracking what you have sold. And then the last thing, things can get squirrely, it's stuff like that. I bought a package. Can I send my husband with one of the package things? And you just have to come up with these answers to yourself. This is another, there's no handbook. I bought a package, but I only want to use 2, and then I want to use the other one 9 months from now. I bought a package, but I want it to be a little bit different. I bought 2 body talks, but can one of them be a massage? You know what I mean? So people will ask. They have every right to ask. People have their own needs, and they will ask you, oh, I bought this thing, and how are you going to deal with it? So just be aware, when you're offering something that maybe has a little bit of wiggle room, you're likely to have people ask questions about what works for you. And you can never blame the client. They just bought a thing from you. It's always up to I have been tempted to be offended, some of the things people have asked me if they can do with their packages. But they can ask. That's totally their right. I have to say yes or no. So just be aware, you may get into just having to determine some boundaries and what works for you, just because you're offering something that's got a little bit squishier edges to it. After all this nattering, we will come down to the bottom line. We will finish where we started. which is we're in this work for the love of it, but we have to get paid or we can't stay. If you don't get paid, you're going to have to go do something else, unless, again, you're independently wealthy, in which case, terrific, enjoy it. Go take a lot of continuing ed classes. That's what I would do. But if you need to get your bills paid, then you need to get paid to get your bills paid. And if this is the work you want to do, you need to get paid to do it. So you got to get the cheddar. The other piece to consider is the difference between a hobbyist and a professional is having rates, and having rates that you can stand beside. Having rates that say, this is what I charge. Even if you feel all pitter-pat inside, this is my rate. This is what I charge. That makes you a professional. In the eyes of your client's going to just be like, oh, okay, yeah, she knows what she's doing. He knows what he's doing. I guess that this is what they do. And it establishes your credibility. And if you're like, well, I'll take eggs. How about a neck warmer? How about a $20 bill? Then it really does impact your relationship with your client. It impacts trust. When you say, this is what I do, and this is what it costs, then you have established, like, I do this. This is my job. I know how to do it. I'm good at it. Even if you are just faking it till you make it. It's really, and I think as I say this, like, I've been on the other side of that. I've been like, I wanted to, many times I've been on the side of that. Someone's new to town, they do some funky thing, or they've just come out as doing this funky thing, and I want to try it out. Oh, I want to try your Astros steroid serious dog star crystal healing. Yeah, great. How do I do that? How much does it cost? Oh, I guess, whatever you have. I don't want to do it anymore. I've been there, and I'm just like, okay, I'll get back to you when you figure it out. And I don't know if that's probably not fair, but it's true. And it's true for me. And I think it's, we don't have a lot of time to sit here and make other people's life easy. If we're gonna purchase a service, we want to know how much it costs. And that's what you provide for your client when you say, okay, this is how much it costs, even if it's scary. I have absolutely told people with a shaking voice how much it costs. I have absolutely been tapping on my little karate chop point while I tell people how much it costs, because it's scary and I've just changed my rates, or I'm offering something bigger or whatever. And then I move on with my life, because nobody's the worse for wear. And the last thing I will say is, when we have clean, clear rates that we feel like, okay, I can stand behind it. Well, I kind of just touched on that, but it really helps your client to feel safe. Just helps your client to know, I'm in the hands of somebody that takes this work seriously, that takes their work seriously, that takes what they're offering to me seriously. And it just sets the relationship with the client on the right tone right from the outset. You're a professional. You are. You're not there to just like make them feel better or fool around. You're there to do body talk with them, and you're going to do a good job, because this is a great system. You can't do it wrong. So when you say, hey, come see me, this is what it costs, this is where I work, and this is how you book with me, then they're like, okay. Even if they don't know what body talk is, even if they don't know what this weird thing is, even if they're like, okay, my friend said to come. But when you present yourself like, hey, this is my job, your client knows it's serious, and they know they're in good hands. And of course they are. So I believe that is my presentation for you. Just wanted to thank the Pacific Northwest Body Talk Association, because this is one of the things that we offer. And I really want to thank everybody who's been able to come live. And I know there's a lot of people in different time zones now that are picking up the recording. Somebody from Germany, which I think is really exciting and fun. So thank you so much for watching and tuning in and just bringing your energy. I love the matrix. I love being part of us. I love being a body talk practitioner, and you being here and sharing your time with me has really made my life better. And we do get together every month on this third Tuesday of the month, 7 p.m. Pacific time. It's always recorded. And what we do is, so here in the bit.ly/boosterzoom is the mailing list. And so we just every month send out the Zoom invite and the recording to our general mailing list. So that's how you'd get that. Or go check out PacificNorthwestBodyTalk.com for more about what we're doing here in our little neck of the woods. So we're doing some great stuff.